Keith Brooks is standing by. Keith is the program's director with Environmental Defence. He is in Toronto today. Keith, great to have you on CTV News.
Thanks for having me.
You think about this, and I'm curious what you make of it here, because, again, there's this optics issue, there's the garbage issue, there's the diplomatic issue. I mean, there's a lot of kind of levels to this story here. How are you framing it?
Well, we see it as part of a larger story about plastics, right? I mean, plastics are a pretty new invention. We've only had them since about 1950. They're an incredible invention, very durable, but the problem is that durability means that they don't break down. And so over the last couple of years, there have been a number of stories about plastics building up in the oceans. We're finding whales with bellies full of plastics. We're finding plastics in fish, plastics in bottled water, in beer. And so we have this issue of plastics in the environment, and now we have this other diplomatic, political issue of Canada having a plastics problem, having nowhere to send this waste, and having countries in other parts of the world calling us out for being bad contributors to this global problem.
And no doubt with the great work that Environmental Defence does, I mean, you're well aware of this and have been for a while. You're not surprised that some countries are finally saying enough's enough.
No, I mean, we've known for a while that we're failing on recycling. We've been pushing to see improvements on that front for a long time. Among other things, we've been calling for a deposit return program here in Ontario, because we only recycle half of the 3 billion bottles that we use in Ontario every year. So we've known that we're bad recyclers. A recent report done for Environment and Climate Change Canada said that we only recycle 9% of our plastics. It's totally abysmal. We need to do better.
So here's something else I'm curious about, Keith. Why are we sending this waste overseas in the first place?
Well, we don't really have a lot of facilities to actually recycle materials here. There are people that will take the materials away from the municipalities and the places where it gets sent, but we don't actually process those products back into pellets very much here in Canada. A lot of that recycling was happening in China, and why it's ending up now in Malaysia is that China enacted a new policy at the beginning of 2018. It's called the National Sword Policy, but it basically says we're not going to take contaminated plastic garbage anymore. And so ever since then, people have been looking for someone else to ship this stuff. And I think we had for a long time thought we were good recyclers because we could just kind of ship it out of sight, out of mind. And now I think the curtain's been drawn back on this big problem.
Yeah, you say out of sight, out of mind. I was going to use the exact same term, this idea that, we ship it to the other side of the world, to developing countries, and then, we don't have to worry about it anymore. And I mean, the optics of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, Canadians can be forgiven. I think we are pretty, diligent recyclers. Everybody's got their blue box, and people in workplaces, take the time to try to separate things out there. The problem is that we've been inundated by so much plastic. It's very practically impossible to live a plastic-free lifestyle. You go to the grocery store, everything's wrapped in plastic, and then it's very different what you can recycle in different municipalities. Very confusing for Canadians. Plus, you have the fact that the majority of waste actually produced by our society is not even produced in the residential household waste stream. It's in the institutional, industrial, and commercial waste stream. So it's not individual Canadians that can really solve this problem. We're not at fault here for this problem. I mean, we're part of it, but we really need government to take solution to hold producers responsible.
We're just going to show our viewers a map again, Keith, as you and I are speaking of, Malaysia, the Philippines, these two countries, and no doubt there will be more yet to come who start to raise a red flag. Can I ask you, what solutions we could pursue here realistically to try and avoid this kind of thing? What sort of the message that Environmental Defence is sending out?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a declaration that we wrote up and had signed by over 40 other groups a year or two ago when the Canadian government started talking about dealing with plastics. And that declaration says we need to ban some of the worst plastics that we have here. We have all these non-recyclable plastics coming into the market. We need to start banning those. That's what they're doing in Europe. That's what they're doing in lots of other countries. Ban the worst offenders. And then number two, we need to make sure that we recycle the plastics that we do use here. And that means holding producers to account for making sure that we meet high recycling targets. So the government sets a high target and tells the people that are manufacturing and selling and making money from all these plastic products that they have to get them back, and if they don't get them back at the end of life, then they face penalties. So make it in their best interest to ensure that better recycling is done. And then I think a third piece is require recycled content in new plastic products. We have that a lot in paper. We get post-consumer recycled paper. We need to do that more in plastics, and that's going to create more demand for that recycled material. It's going to help enforce the economics of it, help create a market. But we need government to intervene, get industry to do the right things. That's the big fix.
Keith Brooks with Environmental Defense. Wonderful to have you on CTV News today, Keith, and get your expertise on the story. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.